I love. It's one of the most debated topics in our industry, underquoting. It affects buyers, it affects sellers, and it affects vendors. We're going to unpack it this morning. I've got two incredible women here with me, alongside Billy as well. I have Rosie Sullivan from ACOP, Australian College of Professionals.
Good morning, good morning.
And I have Lisa Jemison as well, who is the Guru Swami solicitor in our industry from Jemison Fisher. Don't look scared, Lise. Billy, in fact, we have two such special women here with us this morning that I don't think we're even going to do an intro. I think we should just roll into it. This is a massive, massive topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm got some really good questions for these guys. Should we just go straight into the questions, the Q&A?
Yeah, let's go straight into the questions. You tell me who I need to direct it to, because I've got, as I said, I've got these two women here. These women pretty much run the world, by the way.
Yeah, you're like
Definitely the real estate world.
behind the scenes, certainly. Morning, ladies. Thanks for joining. I've got a question. First and foremost, are you seeing more underquoting now, or was it more prominent 10 years ago when buyers could or vendors could say offers over? That was my first question.
That's directed to me.
That's
well, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll jump in and grab it. It's not necessarily underquoting is the first thing that I would like to say, is that most agents are working within the guidelines that have been issued by the regulator. And there is a view that the guidelines are quite loose, and then the agents follow what is provided. And to give you a really good example is that an agent can quote a guide within 10%, but there's no requirement for the agent when publishing an advertisement to put the top end of the guide. And so the agents put the bottom end of the guide, and then if it sells 15% over at the option, then you've got consumers and often the regulator saying, oh, well, you overquoted 15%. No, they're required to have a guide within 10%, and they're not required to put the high end of the guide on the advertisement. And I think that's one step that the regulator could take to say to the industry, it would make it a lot easier if you had to put the bottom and top end of a guide but they don't. And that causes a lot of problem. We had this debate with some media that was running some stories in relation to alleged underquoting, where they had provided a table and done a lot of work with what they perceived to be underquoting within the industry. And we had to say to them, it's not underquoting. The guide you're quoting is the bottom end of the 10% that agents are allowed. So you go from being, as I say, 25% over to 15% over, and they had to correct that. So I think that's a big problem. The other thing that is relevant is in Queensland for auction properties, agents can't quote any guide.
I was just going to say.
And, save for the amount of money that's made in penalty notices to the industry, you've got to wonder in New South Wales why, if it's such a big problem here in the state, why the regulator doesn't adopt the Queensland model. And perhaps it has to do with how much money is made when agents are fined for allegations of underquoting.
Interesting. We're just going to turn to Rosie for a moment. So Rosie runs the largest training college for real estate in the country, Australian College of Professionals. I'm keen to hear your take on it, Rosie, and what are the new legislations that have come in as well?
I mean, we've had, underquoting as a point of legislation now for 9 years. So it's really, and agents understand it. I think the difference is that the difference between what the agents understand and what our vendors understand. So, agents are, as Lisa stated, following what is set down in the legislation, following what the regulator has stated is permissible in terms of giving a high and a low. It's about the agent's opinion. And there's that void. And I think we can all say, if we've ever sold a property as a vendor, we often have unrealistic views of what our property is worth. And when that happens, the agent is trying very, very hard based on other properties that are sold in the area in terms of they're saying this is what your property is worth. The vendor thinks it's worth more. So, there is a belief out there that perhaps that they are underquoting. And that's a belief from the market, and the regulator is picking that up. And whereas the agent is actually doing the right thing. So if the agent is, talking to the vendor about this is my opinion of price based on reality and fact, and here are my comparables, and this is why they are comparables, not just picking properties out of the air, but actually this is why they are comparable properties, that's got to educate the vendor. So, I mean, you've got to, agents need to bring their vendor along for the ride. Vendors need to say, I trust the professionalism of the agent that I am dealing with. So, and they need to ask the right questions. So, I mean, they are doing the right thing. And I think we're focusing on an issue that hasn't changed in 10 years, that it's been an issue. It's just been highlighted as a point of legislation that can be seen to be we're cleaning up the industry, but it's not. It's actually, just a regulation that is not prescriptive. If they're going to be prescriptive about it and fine agents, then it should be more prescriptive. And with some, as Lisa said, the high end, the low end of an agent's opinion, if we're going to sit on the 10%. So I think there's a whole load of, education to be done, not just of agents, but of vendors and buyers in terms of the reality of what is a property worth. And I mean, it's not an exact science.
But why is it so misunderstood in our industry? Like, I feel like it's something that we're all having to use all day, every day, where as agents, we've got to give our opinion of price. And yet, it seems to be the one topic that people just don't seem to understand. And by people, I mean real estate agents. Why is that?
Well, I think because it's a little bit loose, but I mean, agents are giving their opinion of price based on historical fact. They're giving it to a vendor who is tied up in emotion. So that difference between some historical fact and what the market is doing now and where they think the market is going and what changes are happening in, with legislation in a whole range of different areas, from first home buyers to superannuation funds, and then they're dealing with the fact and having to deal with that. And your vendors and your buyers are purchasing and selling on emotion. So
Okay. So the other question I've got, Lisa, and this is for you, is there have been times where I've gone onto realestate.com myself and I've seen listings on there. Let's as an example, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. It's in DY. I look at that and think, God, that's at least a 1.4 to 1.5 property. And I see a guide on there of, as an example, at 1.2 million. And I think, surely that agent's going to get done for underquoting. I know that property is worth significantly more than that.
Well, it depends. See, so we have to differentiate between a price that an agent gives a vendor when they go out and give a market appraisal, and the criteria. And this goes back to regulation, the criteria as to how the agent forms their opinion, their subjective opinion. And it's in part subjective and objective. And by that, I mean, they can't just base their opinion on nothing. So they would look at past sales and comparable properties on the market. However, once you get past the listing stage, then the agent is required to review the price in an auction campaign. And if the agent's not getting a lot of people through, if other properties have sold under what the agency may consider to be market, there's very little interest. There may be an issue, external issue such as interest rates. It may be the agent's opinion that although the property at the beginning might have been, the agent's opinion might have been 1.5, the agent might be saying, now, look, we've only had 2 couples through. We've been on the market for 3 weeks. We actually think this market is at 1.2 and guide at that price. Now, the agent's able to do that in so long as they can substantiate it and as to how they arrived at that, and then also that they advise the vendor as well. So there's forms and things to be done. But there isn't a set criteria. There's not a checklist of things that agents must go through. And often it's coming off the back of buyers feedback, and buyers don't walk into auction properties going, I'm just going to pay 1.5. They keep their cards close to their chest. And that's the feedback that is going back to vendors. There's a lot of complaint about that. And there's a lot of complaint about agents doing price revisions that are based on buyer feedback. But that's what the system is. That's the way that it is set up. And those complaints could be overcome perhaps with the regulator formulating how a price revision is meant to be done. Real estate agents are not valuers. Valuers go off and have university degrees and have a lot more training and education, and they're valuers. Real estate agents are not. And we've had changes to the training regime for real estate agents, but still, this is an agent's opinion as to price. And while ever you have regulations that are very subjective and directions that are coming from the Commissioner for Fair Trading in relation to pricing, it's going to be very subjective and you're going to have complaints. But there is an option to follow the Queensland model, and then buyers could work out and do their own homework as to what a property's worth, and then decide at what figure they're going to bid to.
What are your thoughts on that, ladies?
Well, I think, value, you talk about valuation, but I mean, valuation and, an agent's opinion of price, whilst based on, historical facts, it's not an exact science. There is no exact science about this. So I think the guidelines need to be much more accepting of the variation that can happen. The variation that can happen if, any type of announcement is made by government or anything changes in interest rates or anything, all of a sudden a market can turn. And or it can start.
Well, look at the last few years. It's been a roller coaster.
It certainly has.
Yeah.
And so agents are left in the middle of all of that, and vendors are left in the middle of all of that, trying to ascertain where they're actually at with that. So I mean, I think there actually needs to be a better way of doing this. And I mean, when an agent might give an opinion, but a vendor is expecting more and wanting more, how is that advertised? Again, it's looking like the agent is underquoting when they're not. They've given their considered professional opinion of price. So I think we've got a problem that hasn't been fixed by the legislation.
And, from an agent's perspective, there's so much work that's required. There really is, because, we can give an opinion of value, we can get it wrong because we're not the market. We can look at, yourself, Billy, you can look at comparables. Then the market comes through, they see stuff that we just didn't see as real estate agents, but the buyers are the market. And so we can get it wrong as well. So, it is important that we fill out the right paperwork. Have you got any other questions for these ladies, Billy? Because I've just got one final question.
I just want to
Been
say,
very quiet there, Billy, this
filling
morning.
out the right paperwork is also about giving the detail that goes with it. So there needs to be good reason, and that good reason needs to be shared with vendors, shared with purchasers, and then you've got a discussion that's worth having.
There you go. I love that. Final question. You've got just as an example, you've got a disgruntled vendor and their parting words are, I'm going to fair trading. Whether they have a case or they don't have a case, that's not relevant. Do fair trading have to look into every single complaint that comes their way?
Well, it doesn't go nowhere is the short answer. If a consumer complains, someone at fair trading, and there are different levels as to whether or not a complaint escalates. But I can say someone at fair trading looks at it. But for the real estate industry, it's part of your ticket of entry to be in the real estate industry. And it's whether you're a real estate agent or you're a solicitor, someone makes a complaint, they're entitled to go to a regulator and have an independent person look at it. And there's remedy and recourse. So if the regulator makes a determination and the trader, so the real estate agent doesn't like it, then there are rights of appeal, which are exercised quite often. That's not the end of it, but it's as I say, it's part of the ticket of entry that if you're going to be in the real estate industry and someone is dissatisfied or unhappy or aggrieved with something that they've perceived has happened or rather has happened, then they can go to fair trading. That's okay. And if agents receive letters from fair trading, they should respond promptly and provide all the evidence, because it's my experience, most matters are resolved at a very entry level and no action is taken.
Mark's just got a very important question as well that's just come up. Why do Greg, John, and I not get invited on the mini conference? Who'd like to
When?
answer that? Oh, when?
I think
When?
Did Greg, when did Greg, John, and Mark get invited to the mini conference?
Oh, look, we will table that at our next annual general
General meeting.
meeting. It'll have to be voted on, but unfortunately, we've had our meeting for this particular convention, and that will be raised next
And I mean,
time.
there is legislation where men are excluded from certain
It's a-
industry style
Yes,
forums for very good reason.
that's right.
And I don't think we need to go into those reasons, but
No.
a vote will be considered.
Next year.
There we go.
I feel lucky to
Ladies,
be here.
thank you. So,
Both of us.
that includes you, Billy. That includes you. Mark said that's slack. All right, ladies, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolute
Lisa's
pleasure.
off to work. Rosie's off to
Work.
work. I was going to say play, but definitely work. And
Right.
I'm also off to work. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Billy, awesome as always.
Thanks, guys. Great episode.
Thanks,
Mark's
Billy.
not happy, but I think everyone else is. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.